Hey there, welcome everybody to today's Feather webinar. Thanks for joining. So today we're going to be talking all about how to retain those donors that came to your website and donated during the holiday season. So obviously generosity is high around that season, but we want to learn how we can retain those donors year round, keep them engaged so that they will hopefully continue to be involved with your organization. So we'll be talking all about some tactics for that today, some of the pain points around it, some tools that can help. But before we dive into the content, I just want to give everyone a couple minutes to join. And yeah, in the meantime, if you guys want to answer a little question, what are you guys doing this year to keep your 2024 holiday donors engaged in 2025? So I'll type it in the chat just so everyone can see it. But what are you all doing this year to keep those holiday donors engaged in 2025? Love to hear any tips and tricks, any campaign tactics you're trying out, anything that's worked in previous years. Yeah. So drop some answers in as we wait for everyone to join. But yeah, we'll be talking a lot about site retargeting, CRM retargeting. So kind of taking that list of donor email addresses and serving ads to people around the web. If they did donate, but maybe haven't been to your site in a while. We'll be talking about donor follow-up best practices. So for email campaigns, how you can automate a lot of that, how you can keep it very personalized. And we'll be getting into some segmentation tactics as well. Sending out personalized thank you cards to donors. Yep, that's a great one. I think that personal touch of receiving something in the mail can really go the extra mile. Using more Feather. Hey, Caleb. Good to see you on here. Personal messaging, cool. Thank you phone calls. Yep, phone calls are another great way to kind of give that personal touch. Yeah, seeing that from a few people, sending notes. Yeah, so we'll be talking obviously about sort of the digital side of things, trying to, make things as efficient and cost effective as possible, but those sort of traditional methods, especially if someone has, converted and given and shown interest, you want to put a little extra time and budget into making sure they feel appreciated by your organization. Handwritten thank you. Director, thank you video on social media. That's a great one too. Yeah, having your director or somebody prominent at your organization actually showing up and saying thank you via video is a great one. Lead up impact postcard for previous donors ahead of spring campaign. Yep, love that. I have an example coming up later on about promoting spring events and spring initiatives to holiday donors. So we can get into that. Actually didn't receive any donations at year end. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, hopefully we have some tactics in here in this webinar that can kind of help you build up that audience this year. So come time for this year's year-end campaigns, you will be getting more of that sort of participation from donors and volunteers and all of that. Redesigning our major donor welcome packets. Okay, cool. Donor cards. Yep, I'm seeing a lot of just like that snail mail style, traditional thank you, handwritten cards showing gratitude through that channel, which is great. Sharing out impact metrics. So we're going to talk about that too. I think transparency and clarity are really key in terms of just showing impact, making sure you're keeping donors in the loop on where their money's actually going, because that's a huge thing, particularly for younger donors, but also just everyone appreciates honesty and transparency from organizations. So quarterly donor impact emails, cool. This is all wonderful stuff. Yeah, Caleb, I love the idea of showing a video of what their donations do, sort of showing that impact video, whether it's like a beneficiary story or something like that. Showing it in video form can be great and really evoke emotion and yeah, so, okay, cool. This is all great stuff. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the content, but keep the ideas coming. And I have a couple other prompts later on to kind of get the interaction going in the chat again. So for anyone who's just joined, today we're going to be talking all about how you can retain holiday donors from 2024 into this year, how you can keep them engaged so that you can turn them into longtime donors and supporters of your organization. So real quick intro, my name's Isa Hasty. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager here at Feather. I'm happy to have you all on today. So thanks again for joining. And I left my email here just in case you want to reach out. I'm always happy to hear from customers and non-customers alike. So if you have any ideas for webinar topics you'd love to hear about, I'm all ears. So yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. And we will be sending the deck out after the presentation. So be on the lookout for that. And you can get my email there afterwards. So for anyone who's new to Feather, just want to give a quick intro of what we do. So we serve more than 1,500 nonprofits ranging from human services orgs, child services organizations, all kinds of 501c3s, animal rescue orgs. And then we also have arts and culture organizations like museums, theaters, things like that. So I'll be showing a variety of examples today, and you'll see kind of a few different types of nonprofits throughout those examples. So hopefully one of them and their work resonates with you. And yeah, Feather helps you kind of get in front of the right audiences. So sort of finding the most relevant people for your organization based on their interests, their affiliations, demographics. And then most of what we're going to be talking about today actually falls in this middle column of engaging. So we're actually going to be covering, I think, all of these bullet points. So we'll be talking about retargeting as a way to stay in front of donors from last year, segmentation as a way to get more personalized in your outreach to each group. We'll talk about email marketing, some ways to automate that, and then email mapping, which is also known as CRM retargeting. So it's another form of serving ads to people based on information you have about them. And then we'll be talking a little bit about donation form abandonment, because obviously, the main sort of goal here is to keep the donors who did give engaged because they have shown that they're interested. But for the ones who didn't give but visited your donate page, we want to make sure that you're not letting them slip off the radar because maybe something got in the way of them giving that time, but they would actually be interested in contributing to your organization down the line. So staying engaged with them over time, regardless of whether they gave in your 2024 campaigns, is key. And then we also provide, ways to track all of your campaigns, see what's working, what's not, where you might want to move some budget around, and you can more accurately report on your campaigns, whether that's to your ED, your board of directors, internally on your team. So I want to make it easy to kind of see what's working, show that impact, and measure your marketing accurately. So quick agenda, we're going to be talking about some challenges and opportunities around retaining holiday donors, and then 3 different strategies for doing so. So the first one's going to be diving into some personalized follow-up campaign tactics and ideas. Then the second one is segmentation and targeted messaging. So again, talking about the importance of getting really targeted and segmented in your outreach. And then the third one is leveraging those retargeting tools. So site retargeting, CRM retargeting, really staying in front of people around the web as they're browsing in that more subtle way to supplement your email marketing efforts. And then I put together some additional resources for you to kind of look at later, which will hopefully be helpful just to get kind of a more comprehensive view of this topic. So yeah, let's dive in. So the challenge here, the holiday season is obviously when nonprofits see a ton of giving, right? People are in a generous spirit. The holiday spirit makes people feel more sort of connected to these causes, and there's just a lot more budget behind advertising. And so you're just seeing more ads, seeing more nonprofits promoting things. And so you're getting more donations, right? People are donating more. But the struggle is to convert those holiday donors into ongoing supporters. And so you're probably familiar with this phenomenon, both as a nonprofit professional and as a donor yourself. I think most of us have gotten inspired before, donated to a cause that we maybe had never heard of, and then never ended up giving again to that organization. And especially if we gave around the holidays or a big giving day or even, a moment of crisis or social unrest, I think there's, again, a lot of money that gets poured into advertising around these times. Things can be very emotional and you can feel generous and give. But in some cases, you might just be giving because you have an urge to help in that moment, but not because it's, a cause that you've always been aware of or particularly connected to. And that's okay because, in moments like that, every dollar counts. But I think the goal is for those nonprofits and your nonprofit to retain as many of those first-time givers as possible. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is sort of how to identify those people who truly are connected with your cause. And then the ones who maybe aren't yet so connected, how can you stay in front of them in a way that is impactful and draws them in and kind of keeps them a part of your community. And maybe it doesn't mean that they're giving all the time, but maybe they are, contributing in other ways or volunteering and things like that. So that's another big thing, just offering multiple ways for people to get involved with your organization outside of just donating money. But yeah, I think the right outreach and the right timing of your outreach can really go a long way in terms of turning a lot of these supporters into longtime donors. And then just a couple stats here that I think were impactful. So 30% of annual giving is done in December and 10% occurs in just the last 3 days of the year. So again, this is that sort of heavy, generous spirit that's happening where people are just giving a lot of money last minute. There's a lot of high urgency ads and emails coming through, last minute, last chance to give before the end of the year. So those are really impactful. And it's kind of like if only there were a way to drive that sense of urgency around, and obviously that's not realistic, but sort of staying on the radar of those people through gradual interactions with them and the right interactions with them over time. So we'll get into this a little bit more, but not constantly asking for donations. You want to balance it with, options to engage in other ways, to subscribe to your newsletter, to see an impact report or a story about someone who was helped by the donation, right? So we'll get into lots of examples like that. And then 70% of donors never give again after their first transaction. So this is a tragic stat, but we will try to work on ways to lower that number. So that was the challenge. What is the opportunity here? So there's a huge opportunity to grow your mission if you're able to retain more of those donors. So obviously, acquiring new donors is key, but there's a couple of stats here that I think are really compelling in terms of the cost effectiveness of retaining donors. So the cost of retaining donors can be up to 5x cheaper than acquiring new ones. And then revenue per donor of recurring donors is actually 77% greater than that of a non-recurring donor. So two revenue-based reasons that you want to really be investing in donor retention. And again, both are key, acquisition of new donors and retaining donors, but donor retention can be a super efficient way to bring in donations without having to spend as much as you do with acquiring new ones. And then just a few other benefits of donor retention. So it builds trust. So that sort of consistent communication and updates outside of just asks are going to strengthen donor confidence. They're going to foster those deep connections and make them feel like they're part of your nonprofit's community. And then it promotes advocacy. So really doing that constant outreach and staying on their radar and providing them with value and not, again, just asking them for money is going to make them feel passionate about your cause and make them feel like they really have a relationship with your brand. And then those recurring donors tend to either already be passionate about your mission or become passionate, and that makes them more likely to advocate to friends, family, colleagues, and obviously word of mouth is huge for nonprofits. So this is something that you want to help foster. And then it also offers that sort of financial stability for your organization. So focusing on donor retention provides kind of a safeguard if your donor acquisition budget shrinks, for example, and it's just that consistent revenue source that you're getting from recurring donors. All right, so let's get into that first strategy. We're going to be talking about some personalized follow-up campaign pain points, tactics, ideas. So imagine donating to a cause that you care about, but you never hear how your gift made an impact. Would you feel motivated to give again? So again, as much as donating is about altruism, we want to feel seen as donors, right? And so it's perfectly understandable that someone would maybe not give again if they're not receiving gratitude or feedback or seeing anything from that organization. And also someone might actually forget that a nonprofit even exists if they're not hearing from them. So that's sort of the tragic part. Someone could really be drawn to your nonprofit's mission and make a donation on the spot. But then if they don't hear from you again, or, if they don't hear things that resonate with them, it could just kind of become a memory that fades and they don't continue to give or engage with you. So you definitely don't want to lose people who could potentially be interested, but you absolutely don't want to lose people who already are interested in your mission and you're just not doing everything you can to kind of stay in front of them. So personalized follow-up is obviously key to making donors feel valued and connected. It makes them feel seen and heard. And so some tips that you can implement right away in terms of incorporating more personalization into your outreach, especially coming off of end of year. You're probably running a good number of ad campaigns, email campaigns, hopefully following up with donors and non-donors alike. And so just some tips to implement. Thanking donors, within 24 hours of them giving. So again, this applies more to like the period of time where they were giving, but this is something that you should have set up year round. So anyone who gives, you want to have an automated email set up to thank them. It's recommended to have this happen within 24 hours, although the sooner the better. I think getting a thank you email within a couple of hours after giving a gift makes sense to me. So you can do that at your discretion, but the sooner the better for that for sure. Addressing donors by name and then pulling in any other relevant information or details about their donation. So we'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, but kind of having an email platform that allows you to pull in that custom data automatically so you can easily and scalably personalize these emails. And then reporting on the impact of their gift with stats, stories, and imagery. So a couple of people in the chat mentioned this as one of the things that they're doing as this sort of post-giving outreach in 2025. Really staying on their radar with those stories of the real world impact that their money had on your cause. And then offering opportunities for further engagement. So this comes back to that point of, someone gave, that doesn't mean that they're ready to give again in January and in February. It doesn't mean that they're ready to become a recurring donor if you ask that. These are all things that you can ask, but you want to sprinkle in value. You want to sprinkle in opportunities for them to learn more about your mission, for them to see the impact again. And so, maybe inviting them to a gala or an event, providing a recurring gift option. This, again, you should wait at least 60 to 90 days before doing something like this, but this can be a good fit for, if you're doing some outreach or like an email series after like an automated email series to thank them or welcome them. Maybe this is something that you insert at the end of that series if they've engaged with your website and your emails throughout that period, throughout that follow-up. And then asking for feedback to improve your outreach. And so we'll get into this in a second, but this is, I think, a great way to engage donors and make them feel like their opinions matter, and also to improve your marketing strategy and your outreach strategy by incorporating the sort of feedback that donors themselves give you. So real quick, drop a yes in the chat, actually, if you would attend a webinar specifically about creating a recurring donor program, because this is a topic that I'm seeing coming up a lot. I would be interested in doing a webinar on this topic, but just want to see if there's appetite. Okay, cool. Awesome. Good to know. We're building one this year. Yay. Okay, cool. I will probably do that within the next 6 weeks. So good to know that there's appetite. So yeah, let's get into asking for feedback, but real quick, here's just a quick example of a thank you email to donors that was sent by a Feather user. This is the Peninsula Community Foundation of Virginia. So this is after Give Local 757, which is actually a springtime giving day that they have, a local giving day. And so this is just an example of an email that they built in Feather and sent out to donors. I think it's just a good example of showing the impact. They said how much money that they were able to raise, and then sort of gave a little bit of context on their story, how they kind of went from the starting point to being able to raise millions of dollars for local nonprofits, and then sort of this gratitude that's expressed in this third paragraph here. So just kind of thanking them, your contribution helps, we're humbled. Language like that, I think, goes a long way. So yeah, great example of a thank you email here. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about donor feedback. So I think this feedback can kind of go a long way in terms of just giving you more to work with in terms of what's working. And so, it can help you create better outreach by doing more of what donors are saying they want. So maybe donors feel that some of your updates are too vague, so you can be more specific or more transparent in your ads and your emails. Or maybe they find behind the scenes stories or beneficiary testimonials are the most effective, so feature more of those in your marketing. But yeah, basically some things that you want to consider when you are asking for donor feedback are choosing the right channel. So there's lots of ways that you can do this. You can do email surveys, you can do phone calls, so actually calling people and asking them directly. And I know a lot of you did some phone calls to follow up and thank donors for contributions. So it sounds like a lot of you are using like phone calls as sort of a medium for reaching those donors. That could be a way to get them to actually have a conversation with you and give more maybe candid feedback. And then online feedback forms on your website. Feather has a tool called Conversations, which I will get into a little bit more in a couple minutes, but that allows you to set up pop-up surveys on your site and ask for feedback from your web visitors. So this can be a really cool way to actually get some of that donor feedback as well. You want to keep your surveys concise, clear. Focus questions are more likely to be completed. Consider asking both open-ended and closed questions. So closed questions can kind of give you a little bit more quantitative data on like what your audience overall is feeling. And then that qualitative data with open-ended questions can be really helpful for just getting new ideas. Like sometimes people might have a great idea that you hadn't thought of that you can start incorporating. So consider keeping surveys, short and sweet, but with a good mix of questions that you actually feel are going to give you some insight. And then again, always express gratitude. So think of feedback as another way of giving to your nonprofit. And then here I just included a few sample donor survey questions that you might consider including. And at the end in the resources list at the end of the deck, I also included a tool from another organization that has some other ideas for questions. So I'm trying to give as much sort of help in terms of getting started with this type of survey. But yeah, some questions, some examples of questions here are, like what motivated you to donate to our organization? Which programs are you most interested in supporting? So again, part of this is that you could actually create segments based on people's responses as well. So if someone indicates a particular interest in one of your programs, you could then use that in your language in your outreach to them later. How'd you learn about our organization? How could we improve overall giving experience for you? And then how do you feel, or do you feel that your donation is making a meaningful impact? So again, that could be that they don't feel that way and they have some ideas as to why, or maybe they just aren't seeing the impact. And so that would be, a gap to fill. And then how satisfied are you with the communications you're receiving with that from us? So, maybe they have some ideas for what's working, what's not in terms of how you're reaching them. And everyone's different. So obviously you have to take things with a grain of salt, but getting that kind of donor feedback is going to be the best way to actually know what your audience wants. And then in your personalized email outreach and in your ads and everything that you're doing, even mail, thank you cards, all of that, you want to make sure that you're using donor-centered language rather than organization-centered language. So I think sometimes it could be tempting to kind of lead with our organization did this, or we've raised this much money, and you want to try to take those sort of phrases and translate them into something that is donor centric. And so this is a pretty easy thing to do if you're just conscious of it and making sure you're being intentional. But just some examples here. So for thank you messages, a donor-centered example would be your generosity has changed lives by providing clean water. And then the sort of more organization-centered version of that would be our org has provided clean water in 6 countries. So you want to keep the focus on the person who is contributing. For impact updates, thanks to you, 30 families now have a roof over their heads versus we provided shelter to 300 or 30 families this year. And then for event invitations, celebrate the difference you've made by joining our 2025 gala versus attend our 2025 gala to support our organization. So yes, Clarice, I'm going to send out the slides and the recording after this. So you should get that in your email inbox. And then, yeah, I'd love to get a little more interaction in the chat going again. So I was wondering if anyone wants to share maybe an example of some language that you've used in an ad or a subject line or something that you feel is doing a good job of this, right? Being donor-centric as opposed to focusing on your organization. So maybe it's an email subject line that's worked well for you recently, a CTA, something like that. Or maybe if your wheels are spinning as we're talking about this and there's a phrase that you do use, but you're like, oh, maybe we need to like sort of pivot to making it more about the donor. Maybe, yeah, feel free to share that. So love to get a couple examples of this in the chat. Okay, we're a healthcare foundation and we use generosity saves lives as a tagline for our year-end gifts. Yep, it's a great one. Again, just focusing on the feeling that you want to invoke in the donor, right? Not sort of the end goal of your organization, but what are we trying to get the donor to think about as they're reading this? Generosity, people want to feel generous, people want to save lives. Great example. Don't be shy, guys. Think of it like a workshop. Just share what you're working on and we can analyze them together. Your investment in nursing research funds better, or your investment in nursing research funds better healthcare around the world. Yep. That's a great one. Thank you. Your gift is keeping kids warm this winter. Love that one. You are joining God's mission to give help and hope to children in need. Yep. Keeping the focus on the donor, keeping the focus on you rather than us. Yep. These are all great examples. Cool. So yeah, just keep that top of mind as you're developing language for all of your marketing materials, right? You just want to make sure you're always thinking about what is the recipient of this feeling and thinking? What do I want them to feel? And how can I tap into that in the language that I'm using? You are helping more kids thrive in 2025. Okay. Yeah, these are coming in a little slow on my end, so I'm seeing a lot of them populate now. But we're a YMCA, and our holiday campaign was in support of child and youth development programs, part of the thank you messaging. Thanks to your generosity, thousands of hours of free early intervention and child youth development services, as well as free and subsidized memberships, will be available to vulnerable families, seniors, and newcomers. Yep, that's great. I love, yeah, the detail in that, kind of really informing people and educating people about the reach of that impact. We did it. You helped make a difference in a child's life. The goal for the event was to raise enough funds to support 1,300 low-income children and at-risk youth. We blew school out of the water. Yep, great. You're helping refugees find their livelihood in their new home. Yeah, love it. Cool. Yeah, keep these coming if you want, but thank you guys so much for sharing. This is exactly what I'm getting at here. So cool. All right, let's move on. So some quick tips for automating your personalization. So, you want to use the right tools to scale personalization. So having the right email marketing platform, having one that allows for email automation, pulling in those, those custom fields like name, donation amount, things like that. And a digital advertising platform that also allows you to automate things, show ads to different segments based on pages that they visited on your website, kind of keep everything automatically going. And filtering, each audience segment into the next sort of bucket that applies to them based on their activities and their behaviors. So the right sort of digital marketing platform can do all of this, and a CRM that ideally plays nicely with that marketing platform. So you can sort of pull in all of that custom data, all of that information from your donor base into your marketing platform. So you can then do better marketing, more segmented and tailored marketing based on that data. So yeah, an example here of ideally what you'd be able to pull into an email template would be, thank you, first name, for your generous gift of donation amount. So being able to pull that amount in to our, end of year 2024 holiday campaign or whatever the campaign name is. So these are all sort of custom fields that you should be able to pull into an email. And your support has provided meals to 10 families this holiday season. So just an example, but you want to make sure you're aiming to have a platform that allows you to do all of this. And then here's a quick example from another Feather user. This is Playhouse on the Square. So they are a Memphis-based community theater. And this is a thank you email that they sent to people who attended an event. And then they also, I wanted to sort of tie this back to the survey stuff we just talked about, but they actually asked people who attended to take a survey. And so this was a great email. I think this is just a great example of that type of email. So it's short, sweet, shows gratitude. It has one clear sort of action that they want them to take, which is to take the survey. And so, yeah, I think it's a good visually engaging example of an email. And then, you might also want to put new donors into an automated welcome series. So sort of introducing them to your organization, providing more resources, more education, just getting them more familiar with your mission, providing social proof, telling those impact stories, things like that. So those are all things you can easily do in sort of an automated email sequence that you can put people into. And you could either, or like I said earlier, you can even consider sort of asking at the end of that, if you have a segment of those people that you put into that automated sequence who actually then clicked back through to your donate page a couple of times while you were sending them those follow-up emails, those people might actually be primed for you to ask them if they want to become a recurring donor or give again to a spring campaign or something like that. So you want to make sure that you're being careful about not asking too soon, but running email campaigns to follow up with donors can give you that sort of insight into how engaged each donor is with your follow-up, and that can indicate how interested they might be or how ready they might be to actually give again or commit again in some way. So yeah, let's go on to strategy number 2. So talking about segmentation and the importance of targeted messaging. So segmentation, I'm sure everyone knows what this means, but this is basically dividing your donors into smaller groups based on shared characteristics like giving behavior or demographics. And so why does segmentation work? This is because people are most likely to respond to messaging that resonates with their unique motivations and their unique interests, right? And I think another perk of segmentation that I don't think is talked about a lot, but is that it gets you to it forces you to kind of get to know your audience better. So if you're just on autopilot, and I know this, a lot of nonprofits are really strapped for resources and bandwidth and time, but a lot of the time I think we end up sort of just doing what's working. We're on autopilot, just running campaigns, getting things out the door. And not really digging into that data and taking the time to see how you can group your audience based on what they're actually doing, their behaviors, their online activities, things like form fills, giving amount, giving history. And when you're not really looking at that data and creating those segments, you can miss out on really cultivating that audience. And a lot of the time, I think, again, the reason for this is just there's limited time in the day. But it's worth the time. And the longer you do that and the longer you work in a platform like Feather or whatever marketing platform you're working in, and the more data you collect over time, the more specific and targeted you're able to get with those segments. And it's just really cool. It becomes really fun and you can get very, very targeted and run sort of hyper specific segments and tailored messaging to them. So that's where marketing just really becomes a lot more measurably impactful and just kind of fun. So yeah, let's talk about some easy ways that you can get started with segmenting your donors and then also some tools that help. So some examples of segmentation we have here. So first-time donors, like I said, a welcome series introducing them to your mission and other ways to stay involved. You might want to segment out your recurring donors and send them regular updates about the programs that they've supported in the past or that they're interested in. High impact donors are another good bucket. Sending them exclusive updates, inviting them to exclusive events, maybe sending some specific behind the scenes stories or inviting them to donor appreciation events and things like that. And then lapsed donors are another one that I think deserve their own sort of targeted, personalized messaging. So reminding them of their past impact and then encouraging them to support again. And a lot of these, the things you want to apply to these segments apply across the board. So people tend to, trust organizations that are transparent. So you want to make sure that you're being transparent and clear about impact stories and all of that with all of these segments. So yeah, a lot of the rules that apply to one apply to all. And for lapsed donors, you'll ideally have followed all of the steps that we're discussing in this webinar, and they might still not be engaging again. And so this could look like someone who, gave to your Giving Tuesday campaign last year or even 2 years ago and hasn't really engaged with you since or hasn't donated. And so this coming Giving Tuesday could then be an opportunity for you to take that information about, okay, they gave on Giving Tuesday in, let's say, 2023, that for some reason that campaign resonated with them. So you might actually bring that up in your outreach to them, right? Sort of remind them you gave on Giving Tuesday 2 years ago. Would you like to do that again? And so this can be as simple as creating a segment of people who donated in that time frame to that campaign or whatever group you want to focus on, and then have not given again. And then, yeah, you can create tailored messaging like your Giving Tuesday gift in 2023 helped feed 4 families or helped provide meals to 30 children or whatever it is. You can get specific with that. Would you consider doing that again this year? So I think really tapping into the things that people have done in the past will make them feel, again, seen and like this is personalized and you actually are paying attention to the contributions that they've made. And then here we have an example from the American Friends of Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, which is a Feather user. This is just a quick thank you email that they sent to people who attended and donated to this event. So this was just an evening of musicians performing. So they included a nice video of it in the email. Again, expressed gratitude here and just kind of showed the impact of people donating to this event. So this is a great one. And then, yeah, let's get some input again in the chat. So I want to know if you guys are segmenting your donor base in any of these ways. So are any of these segments ones that you're using? Maybe you're doing other things. I'd love to hear if you're kind of getting creative with it. You can obviously target donors who attended a specific event or people who maybe you want to group large donors who helped with the gift match campaign into one bucket, right? So what are some different ways that you all are grouping your donors? Let's share some ideas and give each other some inspo here. I know I have to be patient because the chat takes a second, so hopefully we'll get some answers in a minute. Program support fund type. Yep, that's a good one. Yeah, targeted members and volunteers separately. You've been a part of these stories, you know the impact. Absolutely. Yeah, volunteers are another. I think a lot of what we're talking about here today applies to volunteers as well. So it's a really important part of keeping your organization running, and you want to express gratitude, you want to show them impact, you want to do all of these things as well, but in a way that's tailored to volunteering rather than giving money. Segment donors by level of giving. Okay, yep. Yeah, because obviously, like people who've given, you might have lots of people who've given $5 to $10, which is great. Every dollar counts. But you might want to, say something different to people who've given over $100. So lifetime donors, I guess it's recurring donors. Yeah, there's different jargon for all of this, but it sounds like those are similar. Yes, to all that you've listed. We also are starting to talk about mid-level donors and how to target them. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, like I said, I think, you have to speak differently and use different sort of tactics with people who've donated a ton of money versus just a small amount versus sort of a mid-level amount. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about all of those the reasons why someone would donate 5 versus 50 versus 100 or 1,000 and sort of what might be happening in their life or just like, what their income level is. And all of these things matter when it comes to how you're speaking to these donor segments. So age, all of these things, right? As a museum, we segment $100 and up donors, $10 and up donors, $10 and below. Yep, yeah, you just pretty much put into words what I was just trying to say. Members, event attendees, admissions, tickets purchased. Yep, for sure. And again, coming back to sort of what you can do with segmentation when you've used a platform for a long time and kind of related to what you just said, Cece, about, the different admissions and tickets purchased. We have another Feather user called the Quad City Symphony Orchestra, and I always love to use her as an example. The user, she's like a super user, and she does a great job of sort of pulling data from previous campaigns about what shows people have gone to. So they're an orchestra, so they're doing a lot of like musicals and things like that. And one of my favorite examples is that they ran a Beauty and the Beast show last year, or it was in 2023, and they were able to pull the data on attendees for that when they were marketing for Nightmare Before Christmas in concert, because they figured that there would be some crossover there on the sort of millennial nostalgia appeal of these sort of 90s movies. And so they were able to get pretty good registration to the Nightmare Before Christmas in concert one because they were really paying attention to who attended other similar shows or shows that would probably have a similar target audience. So you can really do a lot by just looking at, ticket purchases and past attendance and things like that when you're creating these segments. Okay, lots of good stuff here. We've really put some focus on the mid-level, so much potential here to grow them into giving or just staying engaged. Yep, absolutely. Past event attendees, messaging is tailored to reflect the topic of that event and why that's meaningful to you. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's move on. Okay, and so I mentioned this a bit earlier, but I wanted to just touch on the conversation tool in Feather, because this allows you to run those pop-up surveys to get feedback and to then really easily create segments based on the feedback. So this is Katie Adkins from the Food Bank for Central and Northeast Missouri, another wonderful Feather user. And this is just a quote that I got from her when she actually was a guest on a webinar last year. So conversations, the unsung hero of Feather. It's so simple to use. It's so simple to set up. So this is actually, I think, her favorite Feather tool. It's one that I think is less commonly used, but is like a secret weapon for just getting that information from your website visitors directly from the horse's mouth. And then again, setting up those segments automatically that you can then sort of reference what they said in the survey in your outreach to them. So I just wanted to click into a couple of these campaigns that she ran. So this one is called Food is Love. And she ran this to her website visitors. So she was targeting a lot of like donors, volunteers, things like that. Um, and the question was, what does food mean to you? So this was kind of just a simple question to get people thinking about the meaning of food. And I think her goal was to kind of draw them closer to the mission and closer to sort of thinking about what food means for them, for the community, for people in need. And so there were just a few different options here. And then as you can see, based on, so that we're in Feather right now, based on the answer here, you can actually hit view group, and then it takes you to this page where you'll see, okay, the campaign is that survey that we just saw, Food is Love, and then the question number, and then the answer, and then you can see all of the people who engaged with that, and then create. So this is basically a segment or a group that exists in Feather automatically, and then you can send, target them with outreach that refers specifically to the answer that they gave in the survey. And then I'll just give another quick example here. So this was another one that she ran about volunteer purpose. So just asking people what their favorite part of volunteering is, helping my community, making a difference for neighbors, meeting new people. It gives me a sense of purpose. It's fun. And again, for, if you want to say, okay, for the people who want to meet new people, I want to send an email or target them with some ads about the opportunities to make new friends and be social through volunteering. You can go to that group and then reach those people who gave you that answer. So just a really great tool for kind of increasing engagement. I've also talked to some Feather users who just like run these surveys on their site just to kind of keep people on the site a little longer, keep them engaged. So even if it's just to sort of say like, have you heard about this event? Yes or no. It can be a pretty simple question, but or you can get a little more detailed and try to get more sort of insight on the audience behavior. But it's just a quick and easy tool that you can set up on any page that you have the pixel set up, and yeah, keep your people engaged on your site longer. And then the third strategy here is leveraging retargeting tools. So retargeting keeps your nonprofit top of mind by showing ads to people who've interacted with your website, emails, or your campaigns. And so, as I've mentioned before, we want to stay on the radar of the people who are giving. So, I think a lot of the one-time givers are inspired and motivated by the spirit of generosity of the season. And so retargeting kind of helps you stay connected with them in that more subtle way over time, and with the goal of turning that contribution into ongoing support. So, a donor who maybe contributes to your holiday campaign but doesn't engage further, retargeting ads after the new year can thank them for their gift. You can run ads that link out to your impact report or highlight ongoing needs, invite them to support again, things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about the importance of running email in tandem with ads. So we're going to talk about retargeting now, but you want to make sure that you're not just doing email outreach. You want to sort of complement that with these ad campaigns so that you're reaching people on multiple channels. So emails are obviously a very direct and personal way to engage donors, but relying solely on email does have its limitations. So by, people receive a ton of emails, inbox fatigue can get high. And so yours might stand out sometimes, it might not always. Emails can be missed, ignored, things like that. So ads sort of provide that more subtle, effective reminder, keeping you top of mind without really overwhelming your donors. And yeah, there's some great stats about the sort of impact of multi-channel on donor retention. And so Next After found that multi-channel donors have actually a 56% higher retention rate than offline only. And so obviously using email is better than only doing, offline advertising, but combining email, advertising, social media, all of these things with whatever else you're doing is going to be the most impactful. So like, yeah, reaching donors who didn't open your emails is one thing that you can do with ads, reinforcing your message visually. So, you can do this in emails, but that's if they open the email. Obviously, a subject line, you can't do much visually. So an ad is something that they can see. You can do a lot visually, using imagery, impactful language, CTAs, colors, things like that. We'll get into a few tips on that in just a minute here. And then, yeah, keeping your inbox or keeping your nonprofit sort of top of mind without adding to that inbox clutter. And so just a couple of specific ways to retarget holiday donors. So we have some what's called CRM retargeting, also called email mapping in Feather. So for any Feather users on here, that's probably what you know it as. And this leverages email addresses to serve ads to donors. So this is particularly useful if some time has passed since a donor visited your website, or if you'd like to create a segment of people who gave to a specific holiday campaign, you can actually use their email addresses as a unique identifier to serve them ads. So no emails are sent as part of this campaign. You're just serving ads around the web, just like you do with display advertising or site retargeting. But it's using that email. So this is great if you have a list of emails from an event or a list of emails from your donor base, right, that you want to target with ads. And like I said, they don't have to have visited your site recently in order to see the ads, as opposed to site retargeting, which is a great tool, but they have to have been to your site more recently. And then with site retargeting, obviously you're serving ads to people who interacted with your holiday campaign, a landing page, a donation form, or another web property where you have a tracking pixel installed. So yeah. And then just a couple examples here from the food bank for the sorry, the food bank for Central and Northeast Missouri, which is the one that we just talked about with Katie Adkins, who uses conversation. So these are just a couple of ads that they ran to promote a spring event. So I think this is a really cool example of, engaging people with something other than that donation ask, right? And so if you have something like this coming up, like an event in the spring or something else that's not a direct appeal, this could be a great thing to promote in retargeting ads to people who were just on your site giving, right, in December, November, things like that. And then for a local event like this, you can use geofilters on your ad campaigns to make sure that you're focusing your budget on people who are most likely to attend. So lots of options there for sort of getting a little narrower in your targeting so that you're spending your budget the most efficiently for like a local event. But yeah, I think asking people to subscribe to a newsletter, providing information about upcoming events, things like that, inviting them to participate in other ways is really important to balance out the asks. And so this is just an example of that with some cute ads. And then retargeting people who almost donated. So this comes back to what I was saying earlier. We want to get all of those people who did donate end of year to stay engaged, but the people who maybe visited your donate page and didn't actually give, they're still valuable to your organization too. And you want to kind of take advantage of the fact that they were on your page and you have access to them, right? So you can serve ads to them if they were on that page recently. And so, an example of some ad copy here might be it's not too late to make a difference. Your gift can still help families in need. So you can obviously get creative here with how you want to appeal to them, but making them feel like, okay, the urgency is done, but you can still give that gift that you were considering giving. And then again, from the AFIPO organization, we have some examples here of some cart abandonment retargeting campaigns. So asking people to complete their gift. Your support is needed now more than ever. So kind of driving that sense of urgency and retargeting people who were on that donation page and did not give. I see lots of stuff happening in the chat, but I'll get to this in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so then asking past donors to give again. So kind of coming back to that topic of lapsed donors. So this is an example from the Peninsula Community Foundation of Virginia. So obviously this is something that, you can implement. You can implement this type of campaign year round. This specifically is a holiday campaign. I know the holidays just passed. I mostly wanted to use this because I feel like their ads are absolutely adorable and they always perform super well. But yeah, you can include all past donors or donors from specific campaigns, like so if you want to ask donors who gave in the holidays in 2023. You can include that. If you want to, run a campaign in a few months asking people who gave this past holiday season, you can include that segment here. So I just pulled this screenshot from Feather to show that they included this group called All Converters. This basically means all donors. That's what they call it. And then Children's Holiday Fund site visitors. So these are basically just people who visited the donate page, visited the Holiday Fund site recently, and they wanted to reach them, asking them to donate. And then, okay, so don't ask again too soon. So this is kind of, you want to be wary of not asking people to give money right after they've given money. And so this is a great example of how AFIPO suppressed recent donors in this campaign that they're currently running to get donations. And this is a really important part of nurturing and retaining donors. Again, that you aren't accidentally putting them off by including them in campaigns where they don't belong, that make you seem pushy. And so this campaign is retargeting recent visitors to their donate page. And obviously people who just gave in the holiday season in 2024, they would fall into that bucket of people who just visited their donate page, but we don't want to ask them to complete their gift because that doesn't make sense. And so you'd want to suppress those people, right? And only show this campaign to people who visited the page and didn't give. And so you can see here, they repressed a couple of different groups here, or suppressed their 2024 donors list and 2024 year-end appeal donations. So kind of covering all of their bases to make sure they're not showing these ads to people who did in fact give in 2024, at the end of 2024. So yeah, and then some quick tips for ad design and for messaging. So like we talked about earlier, using that donor-centric language, because of you, thanks to your generosity, all of the stuff that you guys dropped in the chat, it's great stuff. And including a compelling call to action. So obviously an ad gives you very limited room to work with in terms of copy. And so you want to make sure that you're choosing your language wisely, making sure it's impactful. So things like join us and making an impact year round. And again, you guys dropped some great examples of language that I think could be turned into calls to action pretty easily. I also think sometimes it's helpful to think about email subject lines and ad copy in a similar way, because you have limited space to grab someone's attention with your words, right? And obviously an ad offers more opportunity to engage people visually than a subject line does. But I think in terms of length of text and the need to really pull somebody in, they can feel similar in terms of just the thought process sometimes. And so one thing that I like to do, and I plug this a lot, one thing I like to do is if I have a phrase in mind that I want to use as an email subject line or even an email header or something like that, I might plug it into ChatGPT and ask it to generate alternatives. So this is a really cool way to kind of get just some different options based on the thing that you're thinking of using. And it can give you sort of a good starting point. So if you have a good starting point, yeah, I see those claps. It's a great time saver. I highly recommend it. So just leveraging AI when you can to kind of help you get creative there. Again, you're going to have the best idea of what makes sense to say. But sometimes, we're working on lots of different ads, lots of different emails. Everything kind of starts to sound the same and blend together. And you just need a quick, easy tool to help you generate some alternatives. And so I highly recommend that process. If you're just stuck trying to create ad copy, you can also prompt AI tools to, adhere to certain character limits and things like that, which just makes it really easy. You don't have to do a whole lot of editing, but again, do it at your discretion. Always make sure that you feel like it aligns with your brand, but I think it's just a great way to kind of get your wheels spinning and come up with some other cool options that can perform really well. And then incorporating imagery that evokes emotion, shows that impact, tells your story effectively. So, sometimes this can be a bit sensitive. Obviously, it would be great if we could all show cute pictures of puppy dogs, and that's not always the case. And so making sure that you're being sensitive to that and, not showing images that don't make sense. But if you're able to find imagery that does sort of tell the story of impact and evoke that emotion in your audience, that's great. And beneficiary stories, I think, can go a long way with that. And so building those relationships with beneficiaries can also be really important for that. I know Katie Adkins from the food bank talks about how they make a point to really develop good relationships at the food pantries and at the food bank with the people who are coming and the neighbors, so that they're kind of really plugged into the impact and those stories, and talking to people and building trust in the community, so that when they do say like, hey, like, are you willing to tell your story? It would really go a long way in helping us get more donations for this campaign we're running. People are going to be more willing to share their stories and their experiences. So kind of building that trust, not only with donors, but with your community, with your beneficiaries, it goes a long way. So yeah, and coming back to just always keeping things transparent, clear, authentic. Yeah, that's sort of the expectation more and more from younger people, but just in general, that is sort of becoming the expectation. Traditional marketing tactics that are a little cagey and cryptic don't really work anymore. So sharing real numbers, sharing real impact is the way to go. Cool. We're almost wrapped up. Just wanted to run through this quick list of resources that I put together. So you'll get this when we send the deck out, but I just wanted to include a couple things that you can go through when get this. So next after is Definitive Guide to Donor Retention. So this has a lot of insights on donor retention rates, some benchmarks, things to aim for, and some steps to actually increase that retention. Then we have Donor Retention Strategies for Nonprofits, which is from Wild Apricot. This is a great tool for just getting some ideas on how to spotlight your donors, show appreciation through fun events. So some cool, fun ideas in that one. And then the third one is from Neon One. So this is just ideas for those donor surveys that we talked about, with a few other examples of questions. So one that I didn't include in my slide, but I think it's great, is asking people, what other causes do you support? So like for people who maybe provided, if people answer that and provide a list of several other organizations that they support, you could bring that up in an email saying, hey, like, we know that this issue really matters to you. You know, and sort of honing in on that topic that they're clearly interested in, because they support multiple organizations that do what you do. The fourth one is from Nonprofit Fundraising. So it just reiterates sort of the importance of personalized follow-up, goes over some of the common pitfalls when it comes to donor follow-up, and tips for creating follow-up that drives retention. And then the fifth one is from Double the Donation, talks a lot about giving donors other ways to participate in your cause outside of donating, which I think is just, again, key to not only asking for money, and not only expecting people are going to have endless money to give. So people can give in multiple ways, and you want to give them the opportunity to do that. So yeah, okay, that wraps things up. Thank you guys so much for joining.